It's been 20 years since the U.S. invasion of Iraq, and Baghdad is still on a path towards recovery. Hoping to reconstruct the country after decades of war and neglect, Iraqi Prime Minister Mohammed Shia al-Sudani announced an ambitious megaproject that will transform the country's road network. Dubbed the Route of Development, the transport project will link the Middle East and Europe while turning Iraq into a regional hub. What role could Turkiye play in this multi-billion-dollar plan, and will security challenges create a bumpy road ahead? Let's take a closer look at this report.
طريق التنمية شريان اقتصادي وفرصة واعدة لالتقاء المصالح والتاريخ والثقافات سيغذي بلداننا بمقومات التكامل والتواشد لتكون منطقتنا بعدها قبلة لكل باحث عن نجاح استثماري.
And to further discuss Iraq's potential as a regional transportation hub, joining me now from Islamabad is Hannan Hussain. He is a foreign affairs analyst. And from Ankara, Taha Meli Arvas. He is a professor at Bogazici University. A warm welcome to you both, and thanks for joining me on Straight Talk. So, Taha, could you talk us about the importance of this project, and where would the financing for such a grand project come from?
Well, let's talk about the importance first. Iraq is a very major energy player in the world. The resources they have are unmatched apart from a few other countries. However, it's really a bunch of small, broken up states or cities almost. The interconnection between them is practically non-existent. As a result, this project would unify them through this network of roads, bridges, tunnels, etc., which is very important. Otherwise, if you have all the natural resources in the world but have no way to transport them, you're in a lot of trouble. As far as financing goes, Iraq is by itself a very, very rich country. It has been for many, many decades. The problem has been with those running the countries for the longest time. Due to misallocation, mismanagement, corruption, etc., these revenues from oil have not been put to use in the country properly. So, in short, they could potentially finance the project themselves, or they could use some bridge financing from other countries to help finish this project.
So, Hannan, the project was announced by Iraq's prime minister, who has only been in the job for a few months. Before that, Iraq was without the government for over a year. So is this a sign that Iraqi government is stable now and ready to do business?
I think it's a bit early to make that claim. I think the government, the way it has transitioned, of course, it's on stable shores for now. But if you look back at the promises, a greater degree of priority was also on rebuilding Iraq's own infrastructure. Critical questions also surround, from an investor's point of view, about Iraq's, for example, commitment to financing and transparency, and also with regard to how it protects foreign investment and companies. So I think from that point of view, to kind of go on with this particular notion of developing the transportation project and say that it has naturally guided Iraq towards stable shores, I think a lot has to be done on that front. Mm-hmm. And in that regard, because we have a wider pool of countries from the GCC to Turkey, and including China, that are part of discussions, that kind of lends more optimism to Iraq, not exactly feeling the financing at a time when it has to kind of consolidate domestically.
So Taha, what's the Turkish position towards this project, and what role could Turkiye play in materializing this one?
Sure. Any expansion of infrastructure or transportation networks in any of Turkiye's neighbors benefits Turkiye. As it is, Turkiye is already a hub of energy transport. The completion of these transport networks in Iraq would be a huge benefit to Turkiye. The trade currently between Turkiye and Iraq is very, very low relative to its potential, and it's mainly because of this issue. We have these major natural resources in the country, but it's very difficult to move them apart from Basra, from the south, getting them to the Gulf, and this is a major impediment for continued trade between Turkey and Iraq, or other partners in Iraq, even the Europeans. When they need to send something to Iraq, it would be so much easier for them to send it through Turkey, but they just can't because the transportation networks don't exist in Iraq.
So, Hannan, what sort of economic impact will this project have on Iraq and the wider region once fully operational?
Yeah, I think it'll, first of all, for Iraq, it'll give a more concrete shape to what it means by transportation connectivity in terms of impact. I think it'll play a major role in diversifying Iraq's pursuit from oil revenue towards non-oil. If you look at the current percentage, it is highly tilted towards oil revenue that is coming in, and of course, with regard to transparency concerns about it. So with regard to non-oil revenue, I think the transformation is critical to kind of even deepen regional stakes in stabilizing Iraq, because you see, after post-invasion, there's a greater focus on having these more dependable transportation and connectivity routes, something that we've seen between Saudi Arabia and China, between Turkey and Iraq in March. And so Iraq could, on one end, fulfill its own goal of having a semblance of self-sufficiency, at the same time also increase its regional offering.
So, Taha, the Route of Development project is expected to connect with China's $1 trillion Belt and Road Initiative. Is this another indication of China's growing influence in the Middle East?
Absolutely. I think China has been very involved previously in Africa and has dominated infrastructure projects in Africa and is looking to expand its role. Even Hannan, who's in Pakistan, can also vouch for the Chinese incredible investment in that country and their joint move to allow China access to the ocean there. Yes, it's another step by China to expand their influence, to expand this trade route, but no one has stepped up to the plate to do it. There's a void. The United States occupied Iraq for nearly 20 years.
Yes.
And nothing came of it. They left the country with nothing to show for it. If they had said, yes, we invaded Iraq, and now look at all these great projects we've done, the populace is back on its feet, the economy's good, we increased education, we did nothing, just death and destruction. And the Chinese, if they plan to change that and help to increase infrastructure in the country, so be it. Doesn't matter who does it, but somebody needs to do it to help out this country, who is so rich, but ironically, who is so poor when it comes to infrastructure.
So, Hannan, if materialized, will Baghdad be more indebted to China?
I don't think so, it will. Point to back in 2008, when we did see some momentum on China being able to have a more concessionary attitude towards its lending. And that materialized in 2010 when both countries had their representatives and worked out an agreement for $8.5 billion 80% of that was wiped out. So with that memory in the background, and also the fact that China is not, an outsized contributor to Iraq's current financial woes, kind of strengthens China's case to deepen Iraq's stakes within the Belt and Road and help materialize this regional connectivity conversation, which already is growing by leaps and bounds between China and its Middle Eastern partners.
So, Taha, some argue that this project lacks fluidity, that customers usually prefer to transport their goods directly from Asia to Europe without going through loading and unloading processes. Would you agree? And isn't a diversification good?
Diversification is absolutely good. I mean, we saw a few months ago, a couple of years ago actually now, how the Suez Canal was blocked by one container ship, and that ruined the transport of billions and billions of dollars of goods between Europe and Asia, because there's no alternative. You have to either go through the Suez Canal or you have to go around. There was no alternative because of this because of this gap in transportation between Turkiye and the east of Turkey. So such a imagine if that had happened again. There was a problem with the Suez Canal, terror, something else, some natural disaster prevented ships from transporting directly to Asia from Europe using the Suez Canal. Well, this is an option. This would be an alternative option. It's always good to have options to diversify, despite what would be in the best interest. Obviously, shipping in general is much cheaper than road transportation. However, if you have no other options, that's the worst case scenario. So this would be good to add.
All right, gentlemen, unfortunately, we'll have to leave it here. Thank you very much for joining me on Straight Talk.